Different attacks on crypto and countermeasures. Three main ways. Math. Key attacks, trying to get the key distributed by the owner. Social engineering, we talked about that. Protocol attacks. Technical analysis of the communications. How are these done? Brute force, just running through all the possible keys. We talked about both the length of the block and the length of the key being necessary to obscure sufficiently so that you couldn't run all the possible keys and get all the possible ciphertext out of a given plain text. Why is Moore's law important? What is Moore's law? Doubling computing capacity every 18 months just because the industry is that proactive. Have we been hitting that? Since Moore first postulated this, have we been hitting it?
Yes.
Matt, you're nodding. Yeah? Barely? Just kind of make it? We've been slaughtering it, right? Sometimes by a factor of like 6 in a year, right? It's pretty impressive. When we measure these things, we're talking about millions of instructions per second per year, which reveals how many MIPS years it's going to take to get our plain text into that ciphertext. Our work factor keeps dropping as our computing capacity is going up. What does that have to do with the shelf life of an algorithm? What does that have to do with the shelf life of a key?
They're not good as long.
No, they're not as good as long as we thought they were going to be. Some of these things, you know, what did NIST say the expiration date on that one was?
2019.
19. That's not very far, is it? No. And top secret information is information that could harm national security or damage national security at what length of time? Set us back how far?
15 years.
Is it 15?
Is that what you said yesterday?
Is it 15? Okay. That's a lot longer than between now and 2019, right? So that obviously can't be used for top secret information, right? Good. Ciphertext only. If I'm using a ciphertext only attack, Andy, what's the only thing I have?
It's a ciphertext.
Oh, you are so good at this. You've done this before, I can tell. Yeah, if me as an attacker, I just have a chunk of the ciphertext, can I still reverse engineer that back and find the plain text?
You could try.
I could try. Depending on the complexity of that algorithm that generated it, it's going to be more or less difficult to do it. It's the most difficult to try to go back at. Frequency analysis is the best for this, but at the level of algorithms we have, not very good. Known plain text, guess what? We have both the original message and the encrypted output. Why is that useful? If we already have the original message, why in the world do we need to attack it?
Get the key.
Get the key. Why do we want the key?
Because then you can get all future messages.
Yep, and all past messages for that matter. Everything that's been used or will be used by that key, right? Good. Chosen plain text. We have access to that crypto system, and we have a piece of plain text. We know what the sender was sending. Now we're trying to determine what that ciphertext is, and we can keep generating it from the crypto system to try to match it up with other ciphertexts that we may intercept. Adaptive chosen plain text. Same as this, but we can choose the plain text and change it based on previous attempts. That's pretty straightforward. We just keep running it through the system, keep checking it against what we have, and keep trying to generate new plain text and figure out what matches up with what. Chosen ciphertext. We can get the crypto system, and we can get plain text from ciphertext that we've intercepted as the attacker. And we can try to reverse it back through the system that we have access to. Sort of like unlocking it. Adaptive chosen, again, same as chosen, but we can do iterations of it and continually improve. All right, now we were talking about doing math. differential attacks. This is the timing we were talking about earlier. We run operations, or we measure operations and try to establish what kind of algorithm is taking place, what kind of process is taking place, based on the duration that the process takes. Is that easy? No, that's really, really complicated. You're still stumbling around in the dark. Linear. This is having sets of plain text and ciphertext and still trying to determine the key by comparing them. You're trying to figure out both the process itself and the key. Also difficult, although also very math intensive. What's the birthday problem? What's the birthday problem?
Birthday paradox?
Yeah, what's the birthday paradox?
It says that the probability of two or more people in a group sharing a birthday decreases significantly as you increase the amount of people.
Why? First of all, what would we think that the likelihood of matching up with somebody else would be?
Very low.
Very low. How many people would you think that you would need in a room before you had a high likelihood of meeting somebody with the same birthday?
More than 365?
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. Is it guaranteed? No, but it'd be a much higher likelihood. And we could probably get to 50% with about 180, right? Mathematically, that's what we'd expect. Unfortunately, that's not the case. According to the birthday paradox, if you have 23 people in a room, it's half. The chances are half and half that there'll be somebody else with that birthday. And you get up to 99% with only 57. How is that? How does that work? I don't know.
Comparing any two people's birthday instead of just comparing it against your own.
That's
Good. You're creating more connections there, right? Good. That's math. That's magic to me. That's impressive. Good. So how does that impact us? What does that have to do with security? It means that attacks that we thought would take longer in their MIPS years are not as difficult to find. Mostly when it comes to collisions. It may be easier to generate collisions than we had originally anticipated when we came up with the hashing function. So we try to create longer and longer hash keys. I'm sorry. We try to create longer and longer hashes. Frequency analysis. We talked about this based on the language itself. This is doing Hangman, right? This is doing Wheel of Fortune. Based on what it looks like a message might be. We can interpret the letters we don't know, the characters we don't know, from the ones that we do. On Wheel of Fortune, what are those on the end game? What are the letters that they always pick towards the end?
C,
Is it
G,
RS?
L.
Yeah, and T, yeah. The one,
is what they give you.
are those what they give you, or do you get to pick
For
those?
the final one, you get to choose a separate
else.
set of 4 in a vowel. or
That's what
3
they
in a
give you
vowel.
now. They've changed
give
it
them-
since
they
the
give
old
them
days.
Oh,
In
okay.
the old days, you had to pick 5 and then guess it. Now they give you the 5 most common.
Okay.
And have you pick
All right.
4.
That's nice of them. It's for the math challenge. It helps out. Good.
Well, because everybody was just picking the same
ones.
letters before, so it.
It made the show more streamlined. They could add another 30-second ad for turtle wax. Okay, good. Entropy attack. What's entropy?
The randomness.
The tendency of the universe to go towards chaos, right? So how can we use math to attack a crypto system with entropy?
We actually go against the random generating functions.
Yeah.
And try to decode.
They're not
those.
truly random, are they? No. So they will eventually show some predictability, some pattern there. Implementation attack. What is one of the most famous good algorithms that failed in the implementation. We talked about it earlier. WEP. Again, there was the initialization vector, not the algorithm itself that was difficult. If we don't use the algorithms correctly, they can be exploited. Man in the middle. Same like all the other, like the network attacks we had looked at, like some of the system attacks. When it comes to cryptography, if someone can interject themselves into that communications channel, they can get very valuable information. They can get ciphertext. They can get encrypted keys, and it allows them to try to do all sorts of malicious things, including doing their own key exchange. Replay, just like it sounds, if you can take a part of that communications and use it with the receiver later, you might be able to falsify your credentials and appear as if you are a legitimate sender. And physical. We often forget, because we play in the electronic world so often, that someone can break in and get access to your machine, that they can find your key if you have it written down somewhere, that if you stored it in some place, like a key wallet, they can go and take it. Padding. We talked about this early on. This is one of the things that you can do as a countermeasure to attacks. You can add gibberish to your message and make it longer. In this case, especially if you're using transposition in your process, you're making it that much more complex than if it was just the message with the normal length, which might be vulnerable to, say, frequency attacks. The avalanche concept helps you here. If your encryption process is so complex that changing just a little bit of the plain text will significantly affect the output, anybody who has tampered with it, anyone staging an attack, is going to be detected early on in some of the earliest received messages. Other countermeasures. Use a risk-based approach. Again, we're getting away from fear-based security into risk-based. Make sure you're basing your use of cryptography on your business goals. Why do we say that? Why don't we just encrypt everything?
It's expensive.
It's expensive, and it's time-consuming, and it's onerous, and you need people who know what they're doing, and you need to train your people accordingly. If you don't need to encrypt everything, don't. You can overly complicate it. So first find out what your business requirements are, and then apply the proper use of cryptography based on that. Have those policies and guidelines in place for that. Remember, we want consistency across the organization. How we use it, what we're using, platforms, baselines. Want to do risk assessments. We want to get metrics and find out how well the systems are actually doing what we want them to do. If it's something that turns out to be not cost effective, stop using it. If it's something that is if it's something that doesn't cost that much in terms of time and if it's something that doesn't cost too much in terms of time and effort, maybe you want to broaden its application if that dovetails with your business goals. What are the limitations of cryptography? What won't cryptography do for you? Well, really powerful adversaries can still find your communications even if you've got strong crypto. They can still eventually break them. Unless you're using one-time pads for everything, which is unlikely because that's also cumbersome, these can be broken eventually. Anybody know what the customs service uses to break crypto on smugglers' communications? What kind of systems they use? What kind of power they're bringing to bear against them? What kind of engines they have? They use a distributed network of PlayStation 3s. I think it's something like 180 of them, and they have shown to have the same capacity as some supercomputers. Evidently, it's a fairly effective method. As we said, using crypto is difficult. It's not cheap. It's easier just not to have it in the environment. You have to get the users to comply. Is there any transparency in crypto? In some cases, depending what level you're using and what tools you're using. And the stuff that is unencrypted, because you're not going to encrypt everything, will get stolen as well. Just because you're using crypto in some places does not mean your overall environment is bulletproof. Crypto does have its limitations. Do criminals use it? Yeah, definitely. Terry Childs was the name of the guy in, was it San Francisco? The network admin? We talked about him. Asked for a ransom. Anybody remember about the Australian sewers case? Anybody heard of that one before? Guy got passed over for his job at the sewer district and got very upset about it. And I want to say it was Queensland. It wasn't Sydney. And he had access to their SCADA systems. And so what he was doing is he was proving his claims that they could be attacked by a wireless mobile attacker by using wireless in a mobile configuration to attack the SCADA systems. He was staging the attacks that he had claimed might happen if he wasn't promoted. And he ended up dumping raw sewage, something like 200,000 gallons over several days. He was the only one that had access, so it was pretty easy to figure out who it was that was doing it. And he, I think, went to prison for quite a while. But yeah, other criminals use it for all sorts of reasons. Smugglers, as we mentioned. There was some suggestion that kidnappers in Mexico, where it's become an industry, have been using encryption to send ransom demands. High work factor is going to decrease over time. The limitation there being if you implement a process now, you are going to incur startup costs to get it off the ground that you may have to incur on a fairly regular basis after only a few years. So it's not like it's a magic bullet that you get to pull the trigger one time and it lasts forever. Depending on where you are, you may not be able to use it. Some forms of encryption can't be sent overseas. Some countries see them as militarization of networks. Can anybody name a country that doesn't allow export of crypto systems?
Ours. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Anyone think of a famous system that was not allowed export early on?
PS3.
PS3?
Yeah. Or the PS2, one of the two.
But
that was not for crypto. That was for missile reasons.
Really?
Yeah. They
Because
thought that you could take
the guidance
processor
chips
off of them and
that's
turn on the
awesome.
guidance chip.
That I didn't know. That's pretty awesome. That's very cool. PGP was not allowed to be exported for a while, which was funny because it was designed to allow everybody to communicate in a safe and secure fashion. Good. Who controls that in our country? Who controls the export list?
State Department?
I think it's Commerce. Yeah. Good. Crypto is not necessarily a security technology. It's a communications technology with security implications. Because of that, quite often the security department is the one asked to implement it as opposed to the IT department. It doesn't fix everything. Again, it's not a magic bullet. You still have to provide for all the other aspects of security. Which leg of the triad does crypto not address? Availability has nothing to do with availability. You can't just put crypto in place and imagine that your entire organization is secure. We've got unrelated issues other than confidentiality. We've got other issues than non-repudiation. If you're putting products in the field with default settings, you're doing something obviously wrong. Buggy hardware and software cause a big problem because attackers look for fixes sometimes a lot faster than the system owners do. And the users, the wetware, is always going to be the biggest risk in any system. They're a lot easier to circumvent.